let's talk about a hidden trap that sabotages more projects, more ideas, and more companies than almost anything else. It's the relentless chase for perfect. Today, we're going to flip that idea on its head and show you why embracing good enough isn't settling. It's actually a massive strategic advantage that helps you ship faster and ultimately win. You know the feeling, right? You're so close. You're endlessly tweaking, polishing, absolutely convinced that you're just one more change away from perfection. If that sounds familiar, well, you're definitely not alone. It's a trap that feels super productive, but in reality, it can slow you down to a crawl. So check out this real story. A team spent 3 solid weeks, just comparing cloud providers. They got completely lost in these complex spreadsheets, they had meeting after meeting, and it was all to debate this tiny difference between 99.9% uptime and 99.95% uptime. We're talking about a difference of just a few hours over an entire year. And guess what happened while they were debating that tiny fraction of a percent? A competitor chose the so-called inferior option, launched their product, and started getting actual real customers. They were already out there, learning from real users and getting better, while the first team was still stuck in a spreadsheet. See, speed compounds, but endless analysis, that just goes nowhere. You know, this gets to a really crucial point. We usually don't fail because we lose motivation or give up on the goal itself. We fail because the path we create to get there becomes so complicated, so bogged down with unnecessary steps that we just completely burn out. Simplicity really is the secret to actually getting things done. So, okay, if chasing perfection is the enemy, what's the solution? Well, it's this incredibly powerful shift in your mindset. It's called the good enough strategy. And it's all about moving away from these perfect imaginary ideals and focusing on making real, tangible progress in the real world. And this really boils down to two kinds of decision makers. On one side, you've got the maximizers. These are the folks hunting for the absolute, undisputed best, and they often get trapped in endless analysis and later regret. But on the other side, you have the satisficers. They do something different. They define their essential must-haves, and then they pick the very first option that checks all those boxes. They ship, they learn, and they move on. And you know what? They almost always lap the competition. So this idea, satisficing, it's a great word. It comes from the economist Herbert Simon. And look, it's not about being lazy or settling for something bad. Not at all. It's a deliberate strategy. You clearly define what good enough looks like for right now, and the moment you find something that hits that bar, you pull the trigger and you move. Psychologically, this is huge. It completely reduces decision fatigue, and research actually shows it leads to way less regret and, believe it or not, higher satisfaction with your choices. This right here, this is the mental flip that changes absolutely everything. Instead of torturing yourself asking, is this the single best choice in the entire universe? The much more powerful question is this good enough to ship so we can learn from it? Answering that question is what builds unstoppable momentum. All right, now we're going to get into an idea that might sound a little backward at first. The idea that having fewer options, having more limits, can actually lead to better, more creative solutions. It sounds totally wrong, but stick with me because it's an incredibly powerful concept. 50, just the number 50. What do you think this means? It's not a percentage. It's not a price. It's actually a creative limitation that led to one of the most famous books ever written. Yep, that's right. Dr. Seuss wrote the classic Green Eggs and Ham using a vocabulary of only 50 unique words. His publisher basically dared him to do it. And that incredibly tight constraint didn't hold him back. It forced him to be more inventive. It focused his creativity and, well, turned into pure genius. And that story just perfectly captures this idea. When you have unlimited freedom, you often end up with unfocused garbage. It's the strategic constraints, a tight deadline, a tiny budget, a limited set of tools that so often force you to be brilliant. Okay, so we get the why, that's great, but how do you actually do this? How do you put it into practice? Well, here is a super simple, practical 90-minute sprint that literally any team, or even just you by yourself, can use to bust through that analysis paralysis and get things moving again. It's just 3 timed steps. It's that easy. First, for 30 minutes, you write a 1-page press release. No jargon, no buzzwords. Just clearly define who your user is, what their problem is, and 3 key benefits of your solution. Next, for 45 minutes, you write a brutally honest FAQ. What are the real risks? What are the hard constraints we can't change? And most importantly, what's our kill rule? The clear signal that tells us it's time to stop. And finally, in the last 15 minutes, you subtract one thing. You don't optimize it, you don't improve it, you eliminate it. A form field, a meeting, a process step, gone. See, the whole point of this little sprint is to stop the endless talking. It forces you to take all those vague opinions floating around and turn them into something tangible, an artifact like a press release or an FAQ. And it's those concrete artifacts that actually drive real, focused action. So, as we start to wrap this up, I want you to really focus on this core idea of subtraction, because your true competitive advantage often isn't what you add to a project, it's what you have the discipline and the courage to remove. So here you go, a simple checklist to take with you, a little cheat sheet. Before you start going down that rabbit hole of optimization, just run through these quick questions. They force you to be honest about defining your must-haves, choosing to satisfy, and setting those all-important kill rules. It's a dead simple way to stay focused on what really matters, shipping. Let me leave you with this one last powerful image. Just picture a wide, lazy river that's barely moving versus a narrow, focused channel. Where does the water flow with the most force, the most speed? It's the same exact thing with your work. The limits you impose are what create that focus and that powerful forward momentum. So I'll leave you with this one simple question. Don't wait for some big new project. Just look at what you're doing right now today. What is the one meeting, the one feature, the one report, or the one tiny step you can subtract right now to move just a little bit faster? Your answer to that question, that's your first step toward winning with good enough.